Hi everyone, and welcome to the Taurus August 2021 self-connection reading. This is I Am Illuminated Tarot and meaning-based spiritual coaching services. I am Lauren. Hi and welcome. So this is one of 3 connection readings that I complete each month for each sign. The first of the month is this self-connection reading, which focuses on connecting you with your internal authentic self and really focusing on a place of awareness to some aspect of self that's going to help you continue to be aware and live authentically as yourself. The second reading is a spiritual connection reading where we look at taking your internal authentic self and seeing how it is currently connecting with your external environment. And then we have your love connection reading, which takes a look at how you are currently connecting your internal, unique, authentic self with the internal, unique, authentic selves of others. And we dive into romantic love and the general energy of love as well, and whatever messages come out. So all of the readings are meant to kind of be taken as a holistic total. We start with a month with connecting you with yourself, then seeing how that connects with your external environment and how that connects with others. So it's all about connection, because that's what this is all about, connecting you with your life. So all of my readings do focus on utilizing the Triad of Engagement, which is a coaching technique that I have created that focuses on the use of 3 basic principles of curiosity, courage, and contemplation. So you'll hear me mention these principles throughout the reading and how to kind of use them to unlock awareness towards self in your external environment. All right, Taurus, I hope your August is off to a great start. So I'm going to pull a Power of Surrender card to start for basically, we're going to be tapping into the energy of curiosity here with this card. We are going to be using the theme that is shown on this card to create a question that you are going to keep in mind as you move through the month that is going to help illuminate and turn the beautiful spotlight of curiosity inwards to yourself. So when we're talking about curiosity, we are speaking to the highest form of curiosity. We are speaking to optimism, openness, receptivity towards whatever you're directing curiosity towards. And this is to help break down the negative barrier component to what we, as we move from childhood into adulthood, can turn curiosity into. So a lot of times what happens as we move again from childhood into adulthood is we start to, instead of utilizing curiosity to help continue to keep us open to the magic, wonder, and awe of both our external environment as well as what we can unlock about ourselves, we use it as a blocking place. We basically say we don't want to be curious anymore, or we don't need to be curious because we already know about that aspect of ourselves, or we already know that when we bring out this part of ourselves, this is what happens, or when we engage in this part of our external environment, this is what happens. And this is where when we bring it back to ourselves, this can be really detrimental because we stop learning about ourselves. This is where we start to use the phrases that are like, well, this is just the way I am. Or when you're thinking about a possible unique ability or hope or dream of yours, well, that's just not possible. I've already tried. It's just not. In this lifetime, it's not going to happen. And that's where we truly start to block ourselves off from living not only authentically as ourselves, but being able to really dive into and open up the realm of possibility for our unique self, for our spiritual path, for what destiny holds for us. All right, so the 2 cards that came out for your focus on self-connection for the month of August, we have Surrender Your Fear of Intimacy. And it says, you are ready to let love in. Compassionately identify and begin to release any patterns that stop you from opening your heart. And then we have surrender to what is. And it says, flow with what is instead of fighting it. When you can't change a situation, compassionately accepting it exactly as it is will bring you peace. And when I look at these two combined together, there's an element here of what I'm just getting intuitively is pushing away something beautiful, something secure in your life that pertains specifically to, and I'm really getting here, it's not always that this comes up, but I'm really feeling this around, and it's funny, this is what's come up quite a bit, Taurus, for your sign in general. And all the readings for the past couple of months have really come up centered around relationships, centered around intimate, close, personal, possibly romantic relationships. Now, this can also, depending on your life setup, this can also denote you working with a business partner or very closely with a family member or close friend. So this is when we talk about intimate relationships, it doesn't always necessarily mean a romantic relationship. But there is a quality here about when we're thinking about building out a question to start to unlock awareness about some aspect of ourself that perhaps we have not been aware of previously or have kind of lost awareness and connection to. What I would ask yourself is, what have you been trying to change in some aspect of your personal life that has come from a place that is basically coming from a place of fear of being intimate because it might reveal an aspect of yourself that you are not comfortable with? Let me repeat that. So to ask yourself this question and direct it towards yourself, what aspect of your personal life have you been trying to change or are resistant to opening yourself up to on an intimate, vulnerable level because you yourself are afraid to face that part of yourself? Now, this could look like not wanting to admit that you can't handle it all in your home life. You're trying to take on all the tasks, and it really stems more from the fact that you don't want to admit to yourself that perhaps you would rather work outside the home than be maybe the stay-at-home parent in the home. And you don't want to admit this to either yourself and also admit this to your partner, because it's going to bring up this element, this fear around intimacy, this fear around admitting that perhaps maybe you're weak in this area. And that, or it can come out that maybe you not that you're weak, but that you just don't enjoy doing it. Or this can be where you are constantly trying to push and push and push yourself to be career driven and financially stable because you're afraid of maybe combining resources with a romantic partner. And you're afraid that there's this level of, you're going to have to basically address this level of intimacy where you're going to have to be vulnerable. Maybe you're going to have to share that you haven't been the best with your financial resources up to this point, or that if somehow you're not pushing and trying to change this other side of your existence, trying to make more and more money, that basically if you bring it back to what you're trying to face, it's really not about you facing this fear of trying to make more money, or you're trying to change some aspect of your current situation so that you don't have to have that talk about combining shared resources with another. You're like, no, I don't need to talk about savings and all that, because I'm gonna try to force myself to make more, if that makes sense. This could also be not around finances, not around, being in the home or in the work, but this could even be around with a business partner where you keep trying to, maybe when it says surrender to what is, and it says flow with what is instead of fighting it. And there can be this element of perhaps there's some aspect in your work dynamic. Maybe you keep pushing a idea, or you keep pushing that things have to be a specific way. That when you started this business, this was, what you guys were focusing on. And now things have started to change, and we have to learn how to flow. Now it's hard. I know I'm a Taurus sun sign, so I understand this. I understand the stubbornness that we can get into. We are fixed earth, which is as stable as it can possibly get, but it's also as slow moving and often stubborn as it can possibly get. So we might be really stuck on this idea that, this is what we started with and this is what we have to keep following, but things have changed. Maybe your business has changed, your business dynamic has changed because of the pandemic. Maybe you and your partner have now, as you've gone and started this business and you've been working at it, that there's some aspect now that has changed. Maybe you originally did start out with this vision for it, but in reality, as you've actually gone down the journey of starting a business, this is more of your niche, or this is more of what you guys speak to. And instead of just saying, okay, that's what's happened, and I'm going to just go with it because it seems to be working, you're trying to fight against it, and thereby maybe not wanting to face some element of being intimate with your partner, which means being vulnerable, your work partner, to actually have to admit, things have changed. Maybe this was my original idea for this business. Maybe it's your idea now that's actually the one that's taking off. And I need to be vulnerable and admit to myself that in this case, we can still be equal partners, and I'm still part of the team. I'm still part of all of this, but maybe my idea just didn't work as well as my partner's. And that's okay. But it's hard to face these aspects because a lot of times we can tell ourselves that we're failing, instead of just bringing awareness to an aspect of self that needs to be addressed to help unlock some other aspect of self. So instead of trying to fight to maintain this ideal for the business when it's already changed, instead go with the flow and realize, I'm still working in this business. I'm still, it's not a failure that my idea for the business didn't happen to manifest in the way that I wanted, and that my partner's is actually what's manifesting. It's that instead, maybe now where this business is going to unlock even more about you. Or it's allowing yourself to actually just be open to the fact that, this did change. And I'm going to be vulnerable enough to say, as much time and energy and effort as I put into this, I'm going to have to walk away from it. I'm not going to try to change it. I'm not going to try to force you to keep seeing my opinion. I'm not going to try to force you to keep seeing my vision for this. I'm going to realize it just happened that it didn't work out. And good luck to you, but that makes me realize in a very intimate, vulnerable way that I'm going to have to walk away from this. I might have to face that fear of having to admit to myself that maybe not that this was a failure, but that this just isn't working for me, and that this now is going to allow you to open up to a new opportunity coming in. So, again, building in that question to ask yourself, what part of your life do you keep trying to change instead of working with the flow? What part of your life do you keep pushing to just not want to accept it for what it is? And I'm trying to think of something else. This is even like if you're bringing this into, let's say you're wanting to attract a partner. and you're currently single. This would look like, instead of just saying, I'm single right now, I would really like, I'm going to be brutally honest with myself. I'm really lonely. I would love to have a supportive, intimate partner. This is where you keep trying to change your environment to distract you from the fact that you want a significant other, that you're lonely. This is where we sit there and will build in a bunch of things to keep us distracted. This is where, instead of getting onto a dating site and just saying, I'm going to make that jump, we go out and buy a puppy. Or we sign up for 3 more after work things, where we're like, okay, we're gonna, I'll sign up for that after hours project so that I don't have to face that I'm alone after work ends at the end of the night. That would actually push me to be vulnerable and to really make me be intimate with myself, to say, I'm lonely and I'd like to fill this time with somebody, with a partner. And instead you keep trying to change some aspect of yourself, and in reality what you need to do is just accept the fact that you're lonely and are looking for a partner, and start to take the action towards that. So this is where, when we build in that element of curiosity and we focus on ourselves, we just have to be open to what comes in and to not be afraid. Intimacy, being intimate with ourselves, is the first step in being able to learn how to be intimate with another. To be able to look ourselves in the face, kind of in a raw, naked, vulnerable form, to say, I really need to address this aspect of myself. And I need to, because I need to see what it's going to unlock. I need to see what it's going to bring up. If I am dealing with some fear of intimacy around my financial status, and this is a point of, I don't want anybody to know that I've mismanaged my money, or I don't want anybody to know that I don't make as much as I feel I should, well, then this is an aspect of self that has to be addressed. Because you shouldn't go around this, because right now you're trying to hide that part of yourself, and we shouldn't go around trying to hide parts of ourselves. Because the more we try to hide parts of ourselves, the more we're putting energy towards a part of ourselves, but not in a way that actually unlocks it. We're pushing energy towards it in a way that will instead create anxiety, instead build fear, instead build blocks between being intimate with ourselves and then thereby being intimate with others, because we don't want to admit something to ourselves. I love that it says, compassionately identify and begin to release any patterns that stop you from opening your heart. So again, this is any part of yourself that this is a learning lesson. This is a learning month, is what I'm feeling for you guys, for Taurus, is that it's about learning to be vulnerable, learning to face some part of yourself that is blocking you from being intimate. And blocking you from being intimate first with yourself, to being fully comfortable with who you are. That, let's say it's not financial aspect, this is a relationship, like maybe it does make you uncomfortable that you've been single for so long. And you really would love to be able to have that partnership and share with others, this wonderful love that you have with somebody else. But you keep trying to, not passive aggressively, but passively distract. Like, oh, I'm going to just really over talk about my work, my career, I'm so busy. I just don't even have time for a relationship. And yet everybody knows deep down that you're lonely. And you're like the last one to know. It's kind of one of those things where when we deny ourselves that intimacy, that level of honesty, that level of opening up to love and realizing none of us are perfect and we have to work with aspects of ourselves, and that as we do, this unlocks how to work with them in beneficial ways. that usually we're the last ones to know. Everybody else can see the writing on the wall. I mean, think about friends and family that you have and you see their struggles. And it can be frustrating to watch somebody go through that. It can be frustrating to watch somebody put so much time and effort into not admitting something to themselves, when it would just be easier if they were like, man, I've been really stressed. I just really want a partnership and I'm lonely. Or I'm really stressed because I've mismanaged my money and I don't know what to do. And as soon as you open up that level of intimacy with yourself and then you bring it out and you connect that with another as well, that's when the support from the universe is able to come in and help clear that. That's when the universe comes in and has a friend or a family or somebody's like, oh my gosh, I went through the same thing. I did debt counseling. I totally recommend doing this. Or why don't you speak to this person? They're the ones who really helped me out. You know, it's not as bad as it seems. You just have to know X, Y, and Z. Or I have a friend I've been wanting to introduce you to, but I was too afraid that you would push me away. But would you be willing to go on a blind date with my best friend? You know, that kind of thing. This is where we get a chance to open ourselves up. But first we have to really turn that curiosity and openness and level what if to be intimate towards ourselves, to be vulnerable, to admit that there's some aspect of ourself that is not fully operating at a healthy level, and we need to address it to be able then to transmute that into something beneficial. Because if you're having issues around money, let's say, it's not, what can end up happening is if you don't address it, it'll turn into this kind of poverty scarcity mindset of, well, I never can get out of this cycle. I'm just never going to be able to earn this amount. And suddenly your whole view of your own self-worth in a tangible form gets brought down. I will never be able to make this amount of money. Or if I do, it's going to require so much time, energy, struggle, strife, because that's what I'm doing right now and I still can't get out of debt. When in reality, you're being asked to address this so that you can receive help, because in reality, you have the potential to have unlimited earning potential. And the universe is trying to show you that, but you have to admit that this is an area of weakness that you need to work on. And has a spotlight on it now because the universe is trying to get you ready for the incoming abundance. But we always have that choice, right? To not do that. So we can try to turn away. And that's where we move from curiosity to courage. So courage is what helps us find the courage to make the decision, to take action from a place of authenticity. This is where we make the decision to say, okay, I do have a problem with money. And I have a problem around my relationship with money, and I need to do something about it. What do I need to do? I don't know. But the first step is just taking action to admit that to myself. Taking action maybe to admit that to a significant partner, or to somebody, or to just simply going online and doing a debt consolidation research, or going onto YouTube and just seeing who's out there who maybe speaks on the same level. They've been through the same thing that you've gone through. Or if this is trying to find a partner, it's more directed towards love. This is about simply just taking that first step to sign up for a dating app or website. Or just admitting to your friends that you're lonely and you really love a relationship. And does anybody know anybody? That's it. You don't have to turn your life upside down. You don't have to go out there and, try to, throw yourself into going out to bars by yourself, or, you don't have to fully upend your life. You just need to take one courageous step at a time. So we're going to pull a card here. It's a Spirit Animal Oracle deck card that is going to give us a theme for courage. Oh, love this card. Okay, Taurus. So we have Electric Eel Spirit, number 24, breaking down to a 6. And it says, bring your ideas to life. And when we're thinking about courage, and we're thinking about being curious as to some aspect of self that we have been kind of trying to avoid facing. We've been trying to keep changing and pushing some aspect of our experience that we need to just be okay with. And in turn, use that time to face some insecurity of ourselves as to why we keep trying to force this issue. Now, this could be something that looks very similar to when I'm thinking about it. Like, let's say you are a stay-at-home parent. And in reality, you want to do everything but be a stay-at-home parent. Meaning yes, you're there to pick up the kids, and yes, you're there to make dinner, but in reality, all you want to do is work on your side business. And so you're kind of half doing all the other jobs. And so they're not getting done well, and it's ending up causing a strain, let's say, in your relationship with a significant other, and maybe even with your family or children, because you're not fully engaged. And you keep trying to change this by just, saying, well, I'll just squeeze in a little bit more time here, or it's just, I'll focus tomorrow on cleaning the house that really needs to be clean and organized, but I spent all that time working on my side business over here. And instead of just saying, wait a second, my family all the things that need to be done to run my household are not going to change. They're not going to get less. And the demands of my business hopefully are not going to get less as well. Hopefully they'll continue to grow. So what do I need to look at here? And this can be where you really face that moment of, maybe it's time to talk with my partner about getting, in-home help, getting a nanny, hiring a housekeeper. And maybe this is facing that element of control of like, no, but I can do it all. And in reality, none of us can do it all. We're here to do specific things that work within our wheelhouse. And that generally doesn't include everything, because if it did, we would be God. If we could do everything perfectly, we would not be the imperfect, perfect being that we are. So there's a quality here about kind of working in the framework of what is, not trying to change the situation, not trying to say like, well, if I just spend today getting all the household stuff done, that somehow by Friday everything will just be done and cleared up so that then I could just focus on my business. And it's like, well, no, the household stuff is going to always continue. It's not like you just say like, well, I'll just interact a lot with my kids today so I don't have to interact with them tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. And the same thing can be said about a job as well. So it's not just like, well, if I really put 100% in today, I don't have to put 100% in tomorrow. It's like, no, if you're committing to a job, you have to commit to that job, just like you have to commit to whatever you're choosing to take on. So when I'm seeing here, it says, bring your ideas to life. There's this element of why you're being asked to open yourself up to some aspect of self that right now there is this fear of intimacy. There is this fear of being vulnerable. There is this fear of admitting to yourself that in some capacity, you're going to have to relinquish control in self-realization. Meaning if you are having to realize that you have an issue around financial abundance, you're being asked to address that because in some aspect, it's actually limiting you from being able to bring your ideas to life. Maybe it's limiting you in actually wanting and having the ability to pursue a passion project that's actually going to bring your ideas to life and ultimately lead to this extreme amount of financial abundance. But because you're mismanaging your money now, and because you're kind of holding on to the stigma, but you're trying to hide it at the same time, instead of addressing it to where you can kind of heal it, and all of a sudden you'll start to realize, wow, I have more money to be able to now invest towards an idea, or I can now start to actually feel like I can breathe, and maybe I can reduce my hours at my 9 to 5 to work on a side project. Or if this is, kind of the home example, maybe it's time now to say, maybe at one point it was great for the family for me to be in the home, but now that this new part of myself is being unlocked through a side project, it's time for me to face the fact that even though I control the finances and I want to save this amount of money, that I might have to tap into that savings and say, you know what, for the next 12 months, we get a housekeeper for X amount of time, or we get a nanny for X amount of hours, and this is the cost, and this is the cost of me investing in my idea. And you're still working with what is. You're allowing the things in the home to be taken care of, just not by you, because at this point you're being asked to do something different. But it's shining a light on, maybe you're too afraid to even say that to your partner. Maybe you're too afraid to bring that up because you feel like they're going to look at you and say, well, I thought that was our deal. You do everything here, I do everything there, and that was how we were going to save money. And this is where you have to really have that faith. So courage taps us into faith. Curiosity taps us into awe and wonder, and courage taps us into faith. Faith that as we act authentically from a place of self-awareness, that the universe supports us. And that includes being supported directly through the people and experiences in our external environment. So there is something here that basically what you're being asked to be vulnerable to and in addressing is going to help bring your idea to life. And this could be also when we're talking about intimate relationships, partnerships, that by admitting to yourself you're lonely and would love a partnership at this point, that could be bringing an idea, an element of fulfillment that you haven't really allowed yourself to tap into. It could bring to life this home life that you've been trying to run from because it's painful that it hasn't been realized. But once you admit to yourself that that's what you truly want, and working all the overtime at work or committing to all these extracurriculars it isn't working anymore to distract you enough from the fact that this is what you really want. Once you just break down that barrier and admit it to yourself, well, that's when things start to come into alignment. All right, now for your final card here, we are going to pull a card for contemplation. So contemplation is the final principle in the Triad of Engagement. It is important because it connects the principle of curiosity with the principle of courage and taking action, and allows us to contemplate the consequences of our action, and thereby being able to integrate the lessons learned and continue our self-education and spiritual growth. This is where we get a chance to evolve. We get a chance to transcend different versions of ourselves as we become aware of different aspects of self, and as we work with different aspects of ourself. So let's see here. Contemplation is also an important principle because it keeps us self-responsible. This is what actually helps us to break down points of stagnation where we get into patterns, kind of like what this first card, this intimacy card says, where it says, compassionately identify and begin to release any patterns that stop you from opening your heart. Now, when we're not contemplating and we're not learning from the consequences of our actions, we can get into really difficult, negative, and destructive patterns of behavior. This is where we keep moving from one job to another, and instead of stopping to say, well, okay, I've had 6 jobs in 2 years and I've hated them all, it must be them. This is where we stop and say, wait a second. The only aspect that I can control in my life is me, is taking courageous action. And the only unifying factor in all of those 6 jobs that I had that I didn't like was me. maybe there's something that I need to address there. Now I need to be curious. Now I need to say, okay, start with curiosity, reflect on where I took action and how, and then to say, okay, what was it that didn't work out there? And how was I a part of that? And the more that we become aware like that, the more that we have those we open ourselves up to those aha moments of, oh, it's because I keep focusing on the money. And in reality, I don't care about the money. I care more about the experience. Or, oh, I keep looking at this specific industry and I realize I don't even like this industry. It's kind of one of those, it seems so duh when we think about it, but it's like until we actually connect those dots and reflect, oftentimes we're just going through the motions and we don't realize it. We think we're taking all this action, and in reality, because we're not aware and we're not authentically engaging ourselves with that action taken, we are not actually doing anything. We're just spinning our wheels instead of engaging and living into life. And it's that engagement that brings that sense of awareness, that brings that sense of emotional fulfillment, that brings that sense of meaning to everything that you do. Okay, so we have mirror, which says who or what is triggering you. And we have Anna, it says grandmother of Jesus, seeding the light, laying foundations and divine plan. Two very beautiful things to keep in mind here. So mirror, who or what is triggering you? This is a fantastic point of contemplation. Often we will project what we most need to know about ourselves, what we most need to identify and address in ourselves. So what this can look like is us being around another person and that person pisses us off, annoys us. For instance, we're around this other person and it could be one of two things. Let's say you're around a person and they're constantly telling you about, how lonely they are. They're telling you about their most recent crazy dating story. They're always focused on dating and getting the significant other. And every time you're around them, you're just like, God, this is so annoying. It's all they talk about. I never talk about that kind of stuff. All I talk about is wanting this relationship. All I talk about is, the next dating thing. All they want to know is if I know anybody. And in reality, the reason why it's triggering you is because that's actually bringing up a hot button issue within yourself that you want to address. That you kind of would love to be free like that too, to be as easy and open. Or that it's triggering you because you don't want to face it, but deep down you actually do feel like that person who is openly, constantly talking about wanting to be with somebody. Now, the reverse can be that you're around somebody who is constantly negatively talking about people in relationships. Like, oh my God, I just went on another bad date. Being single is where it's at. I just can't believe that some people have to be in a relationship to be happy. I mean, who does that? That's so weak. And that person annoys you. And you feel that when you leave your interactions with that person, you're you feel tired and worn out and it was negative. And you're like, man, that person is just so negative around the energy of love. And it's they're just so negative towards what I know is could be a beautiful relationship. And in reality, it's because it's awakening a kernel of truth within yourself that I don't feel that way. And if I don't feel that way, then what does that mean? Well, it means that I do want a relationship, and it means that I do want that. And that's why when I'm around this person and when they're talking about everything that's not what I want, it bothers me. So that's how this kind of mirroring energy works. We utilize others. So let's say you are the stay-at-home parent and you really want to focus on working now. And maybe that involves even working outside the home. But either way, you're getting more and more frustrated because you're not expressing that you want to follow this passion project or that you want to start working and you just can't deal with all the stuff that's happening in the home. Well, this would look like you getting triggered by your partner coming home and sharing their day at work outside of the house and coming home and saying, man, I am so stressed, I'm exhausted, you don't even know what I had to deal with. And you're like, you don't even know what I had to deal with. And what's so stressful about working out there? You don't have kids to deal with. You didn't have to clean your office. You didn't, and it's like, okay, well, what is it? Why are you getting mad at your partner? Why is that triggering you? Why, when your partner talks about their day at work, it triggers you? It's because you ultimately want that. This is a strange example, but it just kind of came to me right now. So I used to work in the hospitality industry. I, for many years, was in operational management. It's a very stressful job. It's, a job that requires a lot of hours, a job that requires the need to be on constantly, but also to work, nights, weekends, holidays. And I remember listening to the radio on Fridays, driving into work. And this would be the start of like the real meat of my work week, because the weekends are some of the biggest times, in the hospitality industry. And I remember hearing just like the radio, DJs sitting there saying, it's Friday, like, woohoo, everybody's like, get off work early, like, what are your plans for the weekend? And I remember being so bitter and angry about that. Like, oh, must be nice that some people get to celebrate on Fridays and some people get to like enjoy the weekend. I can't. And in reality, it was because by the time I got to that point where I was feeling that way, where I was having this like visceral reaction to people just being happy about the fact that it was Friday, that it was because it was bringing up an element of me that needed to be faced, that I was over committing. I no longer wanted to commit to a schedule that involved working nights, weekends, and holidays. That I was starting to no longer have passion for the industry that I had been in. And instead of me wanting to admit that to myself and say, maybe it's time for me to move on, or maybe it's time for me to look for a different, how I can kind of segue what I do now into a different aspect of the industry so that I don't have to commit to that kind of schedule, I didn't want to deal with that, because in reality that was scary. It was scary to admit to myself that something I had done for, the majority of my adult life at that point, I might have to walk away from. And if I did, then what else was I going to be able to do? And so instead I just got I just got triggered by the DJs on the radio. And it sounds absurd, but this is how us getting triggered or annoyed by things in our life can actually be that first ding, ding, ding of the bell to say something is wrong. Like, look within. Something needs to be addressed, because it's going to lead you to something so much better. And when I did finally get a chance to address that part of myself that said, I don't want to work this schedule anymore. I am no longer passionate about this industry, and I am going to face my fear, being vulnerable, and go out into trying to explore other job avenues, other career opportunities, and just see what I'm good at. That's when my life took a major turn, and a major turn for the better, a major turn that allowed me to unlock the best parts of myself. And this is part of that journey. This is the kind of the end result of that, and now it's starting to move forward into something new. So that's really what I'm trying to get across here with this mirroring energy. There's also Anna, grandmother of Jesus, seeding the light, laying foundations, divine plan. Now this card always speaks to me of when we can't see immediate results or the bigger picture right off the bat, the return on investment, that this can be where this is part of that block of, well, I don't I don't want to, follow a passion. I don't want to leave my 9 to 5 to follow a passion project, because I don't know what this passion project's going to lead to. I don't know what this sacrifice of me leaving my, 200K job here for me to have no money coming in for who knows how long is, I can't, there's no return on investment in a specific amount of time, and I can't see the bigger purpose. And the reason why I feel that with this card is because there's this quality here of where we think of the person of Jesus. Now, granted, you don't have to believe in Jesus. You don't have to believe in Christianity or anything like that. But when we just think of the person who was Jesus, the persona, and we generally know, what he did and what he spoke to. And we think about the lasting legacy that he has created. And we generally know a little bit about, we know his mother, there's the story around Immaculate Conception with Mary. But we don't think beyond that. We don't think, hey, Jesus might have had a grandmother. And we don't know Jesus's grandmother. We don't learn about her if let's say if you are going into Christianity, you generally are not going to learn about Jesus's grandmother. But he had a grandmother. Mary had a mother. Or Joseph, his father, had a mother. Now, when she decided to have that child of hers and to nurture it and to make the sacrifices and to raise that child, she didn't know that that child was eventually going to then take part in giving birth or raising a man who would leave a lasting legacy. She just felt called to have a child and start a family and to raise that person the best that she could. And so there's this quality I always get of kind of like the artist who just feels compelled to paint or compelled to write or compelled to do something, or even like somebody like John Muir, for anybody who is into national parks and American history, that there's this quality of just following this passion within you. And you don't really know, you can't, we never, like, we're not all psychic, right? We all can't see 100% down the line what's going to happen for us. And the reason being is that we're meant to enjoy the journey of life. If we all knew what was going to happen, well, what's the point of living it? It wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be exciting. We wouldn't be ready to see what's around the next corner. We wouldn't be able to be curious. We would just be, nah. So this is really where we get to tap into that kind of element of when you think about some of these artists or some of these famous people who just followed their passion almost blindly. And some of them never realized just how big of an impact their work would have on others down the line that they would never see. There is that quality here of really stepping into connection with the greater everything. So when we think about curiosity, we're tapping into the awe and wonder of life. When we are tapping into courage, we're tapping into faith. Faith that as we act from a place of authenticity, the universe comes in to support us. And now as we move into contemplation, we're focusing on connection. And that connection between us and the greater collective experience. And that this is part of that connection to our purpose. And that our purpose might be so far reaching we don't even understand. But what we're being called to do, the changes we're being called to make, the parts of ourselves are being called to unlock or heal, are meant to help us realize our puzzle piece, realize our contribution, and be able to allow us to follow and do that. Because Imagine if John Muir hadn't had his passion, if he hadn't fallen in love with places like Yosemite, or, just pick one of the national parks. He had a hand in almost all of them. And if he hadn't been passionate as well to an extent where he lived his passion so exuberantly that he attracted people to him. People like presidents who then could actually help bring his vision for protecting these beautiful sanctuaries to life that maybe he couldn't do on his own. Or taking beautiful pictures. You know, I think of somebody like Ansel Adams, who then was able to come in and take pictures and create art out of these protected spaces. And all these men were like linked together. And they all, through deciding to take action from a place of passion, but being vulnerable, realizing that, you know, Ansel Adams didn't know if he was going to make money from taking pictures of beautiful places. John Muir, you know, was he was actually a man who was on a path to become a scientist and create, you know, have a good professional life for himself, but he chose to really focus on this other aspect of self, which at the time, when you think about it, was pretty bold. And it was avant-garde. But he was highly successful. Maybe not successful in the way where he was, you know, living in a giant home and everybody knew his name at the time, but most of us know his name now. And at the time, he made this very important impact. And so, Taurus, to kind of give you that courage and that point of contemplation, sometimes that change we need to make seems so small in comparison to the grander collective everything. But in reality, what it can unlock in just you facing that one small thing and you deciding to take action towards it is what can unlock, again, unlimited abundance or just the unlimited quality of how far-reaching you as a unique, authentic being can be as you live into life. This is a big month, Taurus. I'm a little afraid for myself. I hope you've enjoyed this reading. I hope you check out your spiritual connection reading next week and your love connection reading. If you'd like to book a one-on-one coaching session or a personal tarot reading with me, the link to my website is in the description box below. If you don't see a specific tarot reading that you see in my list of services, you can always just write in what you're hoping to have a reading about, and I will tailor your reading to that. All right. I hope this has been illuminating. And I can't wait to hear from you guys. If you'd like to comment below, maybe some of the aspects of self that you have been afraid to, you know, take a look at, to be intimate with, to allow vulnerability to come into play. I would love to hear that because I know I'll be going through it myself. All right. Bye, Taurus.